There is nothing in them streets for you besides dysfunction, toxicity, chaos, more trauma, more trauma, more trauma, and a little more trauma. Now, we were told that hookup culture was supposed to be the answer, at least an answer to something, right? Our ladies out there, you were told that in order to empower yourself, you needed to go out there and give your body away. You were told that in order for you to have autonomy over your body, in order to reclaim your body, you needed to go out there and give your body away to pretty much anybody that you saw fit, or even sometimes not saw fit, and will regret moments after. But sure enough, you were told that this was going to be the formula. For us as men, we were told that in order to be a man, in order to validate yourself, you needed to go out there and quote unquote sow your oats. And we were not only incentivized, but we were praised for it. We are celebrated for it. And now we're finding ourselves on the other side of this, because never in my life have I seen so many, especially women, speaking out against hookup culture and telling the truth. Because I think that's what happens. Well, I know it's what happens. Is first there's propaganda that's pushed, the message is pushed right into the atmosphere. So the culture is shifted through propaganda. They tell us that there's this thing that, basically is going to mean greater freedom, more fun, it's going to be more engaging. It's like any other product, right? They marketed the idea of hookup culture being for them streets. They marketed this, they sold it to us, they gave it to us as culture. They gave us the hot girls, they gave us the Meg the Stallions. They started us off actually early when they gave us the Lil Kims, etc. Right? They took out the Lauryn Hill and they put in Lil Kim. They took out the tribes, the tribes called Quest, and instead they gave us the Tupacs. Right? They gave us a new narrative that we could follow, or really should follow if we're going to be culturally relevant, and we started to buy into it. And we started to live in accordance with that message. And we started to show ourselves in the very same way the images that were being shown to us were projected. We started to live in a different way that was in complete opposition to what we were doing before, and we were told that this was supposed to be liberation. Now, at first, because you get the instant dopamine hit of something, you feel that, there is something freeing about this. There's something liberating about this. I feel powerful. I feel empowered. It's like a dude, you get that validation from that woman for the first time. Oh man, this feels really good. Oh wow, this must be it. This must be the answer. So the behavior is reinforced. After the reinforcement, you do it again and again. Now, you essentially are still in a state of euphoria per se, right? You're in an unconscious state of just accepting the thing as good because you had the first good hit. It's kind of like a drug. I was an addict for much of my teen years, right? And I lost some of my best friends to addiction. And one thing I know was that when you're an addict, you're always chasing that first high. That's a real phenomenon, right? Now, you're always looking to numb yourself. That's the overall reason why you get on any sort of drug to begin with. You're trying to numb the pain per se, but you're always looking to get to that first fix. And so it's the very same thing with hookup culture. They tell you it's the answer, and they know once you dive into it, at first, you might get a hit. For some of y'all who are like, the person who, let's say, smoked a joint for the first time and had a terrible experience, that's actually like a best case because you never fall into that pipeline. I remember Kendrick talking about the first time that he ever used any type of intoxicant. Like, he had a terrible experience, and so he never used them after that. That's a best case scenario. That, maybe you dip your foot into hookup culture just once. You give your body away and you realize this is terrible. Best case scenario is that you don't at all. But, next best case scenario is that you dip in, you don't like it. The worst case scenario is that you dip in and something is reinforced. And so you believe, oh, this is empowering and this is good, which is why you still find a majority, or not a majority, can't say that, but many individuals who are still trying to reinforce hookup culture. They're still trying to fight for this. They're still trying to stand up for it and say there's nothing wrong, and they're trying to perpetuate it, and they're trying to shame those who are not involved in it, or they're trying to shame other women who basically have opted out of that system, saying you are, falling for this patriarchal system. And as men, we are being shamed. We're being called lames. We're being called simps. We're being called any name in the book, so long as we're not giving ourselves to essentially this propaganda, this message, because that's what it is. I'm going to call it what it is. It was never a movement that was meant for the people. It was meant for control. It was meant for power. Those who see themselves and perceive themselves as being in positions of power, the government systems, the organizations and companies that are in relationship with those governmental systems, etc., they want a population who is miserable, who is depressed, who has no sense of true identity, no sense of self-respect, no sense of self-worth. Why? Because those people are easy to control. And if you're easy to control, then you will buy from those people forever. You will always, it's like if we think about the epidemic of, it is an epidemic of surgeries, all types of facial reconstructions, body reconstructions, that is rooted in body dysmorphia, or it's rooted in the hatred for our own body. And we were taught to hate our own body because a baby is not born with the belief that something is wrong with how I look, something is wrong with how I'm shaped. That's propaganda. Those are messages pushed to you, and it's not by accident. They choose an archetype, they put that archetype in front of you, and they show it as many times as possible to say this is the standard, right? And then we buy into that archetype, we believe it to be the standard, and so we start to shape ourselves around that standard. It's the very same thing when it comes to hookup culture. I remember when the turn of the tides happened, and it's like, there used to be a sort of a taboo around being promiscuous, right? Now, some would say for men that never existed. I'm gonna refute that. I would say it won't be the same extent that women were held, accountable amongst one another per se, but there was still a level of taboo when I was coming up, when I was a youngin'. Then there was a switch that happened in my late teens coming into my 20s. And I saw the shift happen night and day, where all of a sudden it was being celebrated. Like companies were putting slogans out. Like people were shameless about this, y'all. And I understood internally that this is going to be problematic, but I was still essentially a bit a part of that problem because I hadn't committed myself either way to say I'm not going to live that way, and instead I'm going to live that way. Especially as a young man. I mean, come on, like this is supposed to be your golden hour. This is supposed to be when you're out there exploring, right? That's what they tell y'all ladies. Oh, this is supposed, you need to go out there and explore right now. Don't get married. It doesn't matter if you find somebody who, you could create a stable, healthy relationship dynamic. You don't know nothing. So go out there and just, create trauma for the next however many years that you live on this planet, and start the trauma right now as early as possible. I remember in the late years of high school, like chicks who were coming back and like celebrating the fact that they had just, hooked up with 3 guys that weekend, like it was trophies or something like that. And I look back in hindsight, we're not even 30 years old yet. I'm 28 at this point. And some of them, you can see the trauma on them already. You can see what it's done. You can see the last decade on them. Imagine 20 years of this. Imagine 30 years of this. And this is what we're selling. This is the ideology that we're now perpetuating. Because what happens is once they give, the messaging and the people accept the message, or a certain subsect of the population accepts the message, they become the evangelist, the perpetuator of the message. This is how I'm telling y'all. That's how they create these movements. So now you have a movement that is, it's essentially, it's working itself as a system. It's like if you're to break down the mind of an individual to turn them into a slave, the way that they would do that was to have them buy into their own slavery. That's how that worked. And so you have to break them down psychologically, get them to the point where they accept the idea for themselves. And that's the only way you can truly have power over somebody, when they have accepted the identity. And that's what's happened with hookup culture. That's what's happened with being for the streets. This is the truth about being for the streets. It is going to lead to greater levels of trauma, greater levels of dysfunction. It's going to lead to greater levels of the very same thing that you believe you're actually fixing. They tell you, oh, there's a problem. The problem is you're not empowered because, you can't do what you want with your body. So this is what we're going to give you. We're going to give you a way of life. And that way of life is give your body to anybody and have no discretion about it and don't value yourself. They're not going to say it in that way, but that's essentially what they're pushing as a propaganda. They're making these things normalized. There's a reason why they weren't normalized. There's a reason why your private parts are called private. You understand me? There's a reason why we lived a certain way for so long throughout history. There's a reason why we did things a certain way. We want to throw out all traditional values, not understanding that there's a reason why these were constituted. There's a reason why there are moral codes that we keep as humans. It's not saying that everybody always had them, but it's saying that these were the best ways to function as a society. This is what worked. Well, I don't like the traditional household, but it worked. Having mommy and daddy in the household worked. Having two parents in the household worked. For many, and for many who don't have that, the pain. The struggle, the sense of weight there is when you're the only one in the household. You can play and go along with the narrative that you have to look strong. You don't have to. It's not normal. And your desire to have that two-parent system, your desire to have that person that you are partnered with in such a way is a natural and normal tendency. It was the actual natural. Now we've normalized insanity. So we're basically, again, we're perpetuating the very same narrative, the very same system that is actually creating the trauma and dysfunction that we're now trying to eradicate on the other side. And I'm not the dude to like the systems, the elite. Like, yeah, sure. They created this system. They created this way of thought. But if you're not willing to think for yourself and you're afraid of the hive consciousness, not Beyonce's fans, but, the mass consciousness, the collective consciousness, you're afraid of the mob, essentially. Like I was afraid of the mob. I wouldn't say these things before. I would not talk that talk for real. I would talk. I was willing to say things, but not to this extent. Because I was afraid that the mob was going to come for me. Y'all going to be in the comment section going crazy on me. Y'all going to try to cancel me because I'm telling the damn truth. But I said, you know what? If the cost of telling the truth is being canceled, then it's worth it every single time. Because you can't cancel the truth. You can try cancel me, but you can't cancel the truth. You see what I'm saying? You can try, he's irrelevant now. We don't want to listen to him anymore. Oh no, he's a shamer, he's a blamer, he's a this. Okay, you can do that to me all day long. I'm gonna be good, trust me. But one thing you cannot cancel is the truth because it lives in you. You know the truth. You know this ain't working out. You may be a defendant of this. You may be watching this right now with your blood boiling. And it's so funny to me because I realize things at a deeper, more introspective level, right? To see people from my own perspective and to say when somebody is fighting, like an argument, they're actually the closest to change. I promise you, they're the close. So anytime you may have somebody who's like, who's so riled up about the truth that you're telling, it's because they're close to it and they're doing everything they can to defend themselves because they need to preserve and protect that ideology because there's a part of them that actually knows that this is problematic, this isn't working. And so every day they have to remind themselves, this is good, this is good. I remember hearing about a post that went out and it was like a meme. It was jokish, but it was essentially like a girl laying on her bed and it was like, when the feeling you get when like he's about to pull up or whatever it is. And it was something to do with like a hookup. And literally all the girls were like, oh my God, the nerves. Oh my God. There was like hundreds of thousands of comments. It was like a multi-million, it's like 20 million views on this damn thing, right? It was from back in the day. And all these girls were basically talking about their experience. And it's like, oh man, it's like, I have to do so much to get over that feeling. I have to do so much to get over the feeling of before a hookup and blah, blah, blah. And, instead of this realization, I think it was like Brett Cooper who covered this when I heard this story right back in the day. And instead of the realization that the reason you're feeling the way that you are is because this is not natural, that your body is literally rejecting this. Your body is saying, no, we don't just give ourselves away to just anybody. We create an intimate connection and a bond to somebody that we care about and that cares about us. And then we form a true union and then we get together and procreate. You understand me? But instead of listening to that indicator, you're listening to the voices that have been perpetuated. And unfortunately, many of the voices have been perpetuated through, again, the people who are supposed to be in places of authority in our lives, our own parents, our own family members. Your auntie's over there telling you, girl, you need to go out and, excuse me, auntie, after what you've been through? Or sometimes they're trying to live vicariously through you. Maybe they've been in a 30-year marriage, but they're telling you need to be for the streets. So that 30 years later, you can now be in a position where you're confused, broke, dusty, disgusting, and you settle for a relationship that is lackluster because it's anything, or worse off, you just have nothing at all. And you just spend every single day, blaming the world for everything that happened to you as opposed to the decisions that were made. So I tell you this, it's never too late, y'all. It's never too late to shift your level of consciousness, to start thinking for yourself and start moving for yourself, start making different decisions. It's a choice whether or not you continue to perpetuate that. Is it harder? Absolutely. If you've been like some of these folks who I've heard stories about, they're in certain work spaces, let's just say that, certain OFs and such, and they're living in a certain way. Maybe they're in the corn industry, husking corn. You catch my drift? Like maybe you've been given to that life, right? It's not too late then. Am I gonna say that you're not going to have consequences? No, that's a lie. Anybody tells you there's no consequences is an absolute lie. There are consequences to the decisions that we make in life. If you went out there and let's say you had good intentions in your heart, you're a quote unquote good person, you go out there and you take somebody's life and you end up in prison. You can change your life in prison, but that does not mean you're not going to be free. You understand? You can free yourself in the mind and start living a different way, but you have to live with the consequences of your actions. And we're creating a culture and a society where people don't have to live with the consequences. But the truth is, in real life, you always have to deal with the consequences. There are always going to be consequences, even if the consequence is the person that you would have wanted to pair bond with, the person that you would have wanted to be in a relationship with does not want to be with you because the person he wants to be with, the person she wants to be with is somebody who has honored themselves. That might be the case. That's the consequence. And we can't shame people into how dare you, you should accept me, etc. Absolutely not. If I got kids and I try to get in a relationship and she tells me, look, I just can't be with somebody with kids. I completely understand. That is your right. You have every right to do so. I shouldn't be pressuring her into changing her way of thinking just because I moved a certain way in my life. I need to accept the cards that I dealt myself and then to move accordingly. So you will find somebody who will love you where you are. You will find somebody who will love you with your history and all that, right? But am I going to say that it's all going to be peaches and, rainbows? Am I going to say that if you're working in a certain industry and you were putting out certain content that your future employee or future employers aren't going to be looking at you sideways, that it might be harder to get a job? No, I'm not going to tell you that. You got face tattoos that, they're just going to hire you off. No, I'm not going to tell you that. I'm not going to sell you a delusion. And instead of trying to actually take accountability and then to change the way we're living, we try to shame the culture. We try to shame the ones, who are essentially choosing self-respect. We try to get them on our side instead of accepting that the thing that you have done has not been serving you. It just hasn't. Simple as that. Or it doesn't follow the code and conduct of the thing that you may desire. If I want to work at, some high-tech sales company, Salesforce or something like that, and I got tattoos all over my face and I'm trying to get a job where I'm in front of people, look, they have every right not to hire me. Every right. And I can't yell racism. I can't yell discrimination. It's as simple as we want people who have a professional profile, which means as a salesperson, you're going to be interacting and engaging with people physically, face to face. We don't want to scare off the customer because all of us have, already preconceived notions. I could be but I'm a great person. I'm an amazing person. I just have tattoos on my face. I know, but that's a consequence of making that decision right there. This is the era of, not the era, because eras go too fast now. This is the age of personal accountability, because personal accountability or responsibility is the gateway to true power. True power within, true empowerment as we've been, touting hookup culture, being for the streets to be. So that's my soapbox moment. Till the next time, peace.
I used to be afraid of the dark, place unknown like a heart in their heart. I used to see my life in the bar. Now the kids unchained, every shackle is lost. 2 steps in the moonlight, 2 step in the daytime. You just know when it feel right. You got a feeling the time's not. See you through those shades that I just threw on. Through my lenses, you just can't do no wrong. I fell in love with myself again. I fell in love with myself. I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon.